What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Dad Needs to Talk. I'm your host, Robert, and today we're going to be talking about the kept man of the Princess Knight manga, specifically the first three volumes. So, couple of things just to say up front about this. So, first of all, this is a very adult, dark fantasy series. So, I'm talking about sex, drugs, nudity. It's got it all. Um, Also, there's an anime coming forward later this year, which I'm gonna circle back to that in a little bit. Um, and yeah, so just want to mention a couple of those things up front, just so that y'all kind of know what y'all are stepping into with this series, because I definitely have uh, some things to say about it. All right, so like I said, this manga is a dark fantasy series based off of a light novel. Now, the manga and the light novel both started within like a few months of each other. And the other point I want to mention as well, this first part of this will be spoiler free, and I'll indicate when I go into actual story details and stuff, because more than likely, a lot of people are going to discover this later this year when the anime comes out. So that's something I want to say up front. But yeah, so the original story with the light novel is done by Toru Shirogane, and these three volumes of the manga are done by a artist named Kian. So that's the interesting thing with the kind of like structure of all this before I really dive into the nitty gritty of everything, is that this first part that I'm going to be talking about today, like I said, three volumes of the manga were done by one person. And then I see that it started up with like an act two with a different artist that started a few months after this first part ended. And of course, in the background, the light novel is still going by the same overall creator, but I have a feeling that with this only being three volumes, 15 chapters, that it's all probably going to be adapted into the season of the anime that they do later this year. Now, the manga for this is also published by Yen Press. Now, as I've talked about many times before in the past, a couple of ways to get your boy's attention is one, interesting or beautiful cover art, which this first volume and all the volumes definitely have some pretty good looking art, a title that catches your attention, and then also if there is a easily accessible way for me to at least get a little taste of what's going on with this. And that is what happened with this. So this manga has been one on my radar for a while now, maybe like a couple of years. Like every time I'm out and about at the store and I happen to see it on the shelf, I'm like, oh, okay, I kind of glance over at the title and stuff. And then it came back on my radar because I saw another key visual for the anime. And I was like, oh yeah, that one series. So one of my go-tos has been Google Playbooks, because for majority of the books and manga and stuff on there, they have a free sample, which is typically can be anywhere from like 15 to 30-ish pages. And man, this series immediately perks you up, to say the least, and gets your attention. Cause out the gate within the first like couple of pages, we see cheeks in the air, and then we get this insane double page spread of the main character, Matthew, getting a little oral pleasure. And then the Princess Knight kind of like in the background with like her blade going across the double page spread over him and the other lady. Crazy, like I said, double page spread. Like I said, that's within like the first couple of pages. And then it kind of starts going from there. So, what is this series? So, the basic setup and premise of this is that, like I said, we have our main character, Matthew, or I guess the main male lead, Matthew, who is known as a kept man, which basically, at least to the outside world, he is working for the Princess Knight, whose name is Arwen, Arwin. Arwen. She is a princess from a kingdom that was destroyed, and so her and her group have been delving into this dungeon to try to find this artifact in order to kind of help rebuild her nation and stuff, so to speak. And to everybody else, Matthew is just seen as just a lazy scumbag type of dude who is just leeching off of the Princess Knight, just asking her for money just so he can go to the bars and you know meet women and stuff and drink his day away and he's weak. All this stuff, that is the outside perception of majority of people in this town. But that is very, very far from the case. And I'm not going to get into spoilers yet, but these 3 volumes do a really good job of kind of setting up the current situation, whatever, what's going on, and then kind of giving detail and context for both of these characters as far as like what their backgrounds are, how they ended up meeting and coming together and stuff, and what's really going on. And so you actually kind of get to learn more about Matthew, his history and stuff, and what's going on, and then how he ended up linking up with the Princess Knight and in this situation and stuff with her. So that's a really good setup for it. For like I said, for the overall structure of these 3 volumes, the art and stuff of it looks really good. Not sure how the anime is going to do or whatever, but hey, I'll just say your boy spent the coins on the manga. I worked a little extra hard over the Christmas break, so I had a few extra coins. So I bought all 3 volumes. Like after I read that sample of volume 1, I bought it, read it, and immediately bought volumes 2 and 3. I was like, "Yep, I'm gonna read through all this weekend," and thus here I am, 2 days later, recording this. But yeah, so like I said up front, this is a dark fantasy action series. So I would kind of put it in the same vein of kind of like brutality and cruelty of worlds, like even like in live action shows like Game of Thrones or Vikings or Vinland Saga, Berserk to some degree, to where Matthew, once you kind of like really get to see and learn who and what he is and what he's about, he is a type of character that will do any and everything in order to keep going towards his goals and to protect the Princess Knight. And so that means that yes, he is not a very likable character. Like, yeah, he is charismatic, he has some goofy moments and stuff, but when it comes down to like the nitty gritty, getting your hands dirty, he's that type of character. And like I said, like I was just immediately thinking about different characters that present one way in the daylight, but then in the shadows, they getting their hands dirty, taking people out behind the scenes and kind of, playing in people's faces where he had to kill somebody, and then next page over, he's going talking to their sibling or their spouse or whatever, being like, oh my God, he on that type of time. But all this to say, like I said, if you were into dark fantasy type of series, then this is one that you might want to put on your radar. And with that being said, now I'm gonna dive into some specifics with this. So if you wanna maybe check out the manga yourself, or if the anime is out by the time you're finding this, whatever, go check it out. Make that judgment call yourself. But I'm about to dive into some specifics. So it was very dope learning that Matthew is far from being a weakling. Like getting that reveal that he was from a legendary party on another continent, and he had the epithet like the Marduk, the giant eater, and was very dope. And you learn that also there's other characters like the dwarf guy who is kind of like the head of the Adventurers Guild. Find out, oh, back in the day they were in the same party together. This like legendary party that at one point in time was thought to be one of the greatest adventuring parties in the whole world. Well, they went they were conquering this tower, this dungeon tower thing, and they all ended up getting cursed by this by the sun god. And so like the door, for example, whatever, like he doesn't have much like dexterity and stuff in his hands, so he kind of had to give up a lot of like the things that dwarves are known for, like with their craftsmanship and stuff like that. And then Matthew's curse pretty much puts him in the boat of, I immediately thought of Escanor from Seven Deadly Sins, where he has to be under the sun to get his strength and stuff back, because there is a dope moment where there's like a couple of guys that seemingly been trying to chase him down for a couple of days, and so he lures them out into like the following day, lowers them all out into this big open field. It was a nice sunny day, and then you see him one hand grip a giant tree log and just pick it up and then swing it. He just tearing these dudes apart, like doing insane feats. And then that's when it's revealed that, oh yeah, his abilities are now tied with the sun. And so if he is in direct sunlight, then yeah, he gets all his strength, endurance, all that stuff. Super dope to see. Uh, and then there's a moment a little bit later. I'm kind of skipping around on some stuff, whatever. But it was super dope at the end of volume one. Somebody gives him this artifact item that basically is like a miniature sun, that he can deploy, which we found out later in volume three that that's actually an artifact from the sun god that's part of like a bigger plot dealing with his curse and stuff, whatever. But it's dope that it has like an activation word where he can deploy it, and for like several minutes, no matter where he's at or whatever, he has that direct sunlight, and so he can, activate his strength and abilities and stuff, whatever. So that's a pretty cool little thing with that. Now, volume two, I appreciated seeing the a few chapters of flashback. They kind of really delve into who and what Matthew was going through a year or so before when he first met Arwen. And then that's when we get the reveal of her situation of, we knew about her family and everything getting massacred and stuff by these beasts and stuff, which is why she's, adventuring in the dungeon. But the trauma from all that or whatever, she ended up getting this, it's like this, like, dungeon sickness or something like that or whatever that adventurers will get from time to time. And so she started taking these drugs that originally was kind of helping her, but then she became strung out and dependent on it. And that's kind of where her and Matthew ended up in their kind of like kind of like codependent relationship, where he's kind of helping to wean her off of the drugs and stuff. And then she's paying him, but she is also kind of helping him on his quest and stuff to what he's got going on. But now speaking to the brutality of this series, like across these three volumes, we see several characters uh get taken out. We see how ruthless Matthew is, because like when the couple of dudes that were kind of like sneaking around trying to assassinate him or whatever, how he set up the one brother, it was a set of brothers, and how he lured one into a room, strung him up by a rope, and then you see the other one laying in the bed across from him. Now he had a blanket covering from the neck down, and he told the other brother like, yeah, I gave your brother some sleeping potion or whatever that really knocked him out. But then at the end revealed that like, actually no, I actually strangled him a bit too hard, so I kind of learned to loosen the rope for you. And so, you know, that was kind of like those like first early signs of like, okay, yeah, he ain't afraid to get his hands dirty if need be. And then like, man, like volume two is pretty brutal at the end, because you had Polly, the one girl that he was kind of like really kind of like living with and stuff, whatever, before he met Arwen a year plus back. That she kind of, got strung out on drugs. She ended up selling this freaking little girl to this gang group that thankfully Matthew and Arwen teamed up during that flashback to save the little girl and get her mama out of town. Well, we got the sad reveal that during Polly's disappearance after that whole situation, whatever, for this last year, that like a month ago she tracked them down and ended up freaking killing them. And so she had the freaking mother and daughter's hands together in a damn bag she kept on her. And like this was one of those situations where like Matthew already kind of knew she was kind of far gone even back then because of the fact that she got to the point where she was willing to sell a little girl to get money and stuff, whatever. And now the fact that she ended up finding this mother and daughter that everybody thought, okay, yeah, they got away, they're living the best life, and find out that this freaking crazy chick done found them, killed them, and carrying around their freaking hands and stuff, man. And so like, I can't be mad at what Matthew did because basically he's kind of like you've reached a point of no return. You were pretty much unredeemable at this point, and freaking tosses her off the freaking building and stuff, which was freaking crazy to see. And just like the sadness in her eyes as she was falling, and then like the brutality again in volume 3, cause there's this string of drugs and stuff going around, and he's trying to figure out okay who's doing it, who's selling it, all this stuff, whatever. And then it circled back to this artist dude that you met back in volume 1. Kind of find out he had this stash of drugs from somebody else previously that Matthew had to take care of and stuff. And he had the stash of drugs at the kind of like one of like the head chicks from the guild or whatever stashed it at her place. And he took the artist dude out and then went over to go find the drugs. Then Vanessa ended up discovering him, like, yo, what are you doing? And then while they trying to get the drugs cleared out, they find a note and a necklace and all this stuff. So she starts connecting the dots because it was kind of funny in a sad way, which we've seen characters like this across a multitude of media, but especially in these kind of like darker fantasy type of series and stuff where she's not very bright. She wasn't very bright when it came to the men that she chose to be with, but her putting together this situation with the necklace and the drugs and different stuff, whatever, was like, wait, is Arwen an addict and stuff, whatever? And he tried to play it off, and she was like, nah, I ain't gonna fall for your lies. And it's like, you, you can't see these horrible men that you dating, but you piece together this, and he freaking activated the pocket sun, I'll call it, artifact, and freaking took her out, man. It was like, damn, man, like that sucked to see. But like I said, it's just like another example of the brutality of this world and stuff. So, but yeah, man, like all in all, this whole thing was crazy. And then even like the reveal of like the Arwen's cousin that they met like in volume 2 or something, I can't remember because they thought that he was dead, and then he popped back up, whatever. And you learn that he's made this pact with the sun god, and now when he consumes a large quantity of the drugs, he transformed into this freaking crazy beast creature thing. And like seeing him and Matthew tussle it out and stuff, whatever, um, was dope and crazy to see. But that's where we get the reveal of that little pocket sun thing, whatever, was actually another part of this trial that Matthew didn't even know he was part of. Because like when he did something, the beast dude was like, yeah, well, you've passed the second trial. And I love moments when like characters get possessed by like a higher being or whatever, kind of like in like One Piece where like Emu will possess somebody else out in the field, or other series that have done things like that. But it's kind of, and he was basically saying like you've passed such and such part of trial 1, and then you did such and such, use the artifact with the blood sacrifice for trial 2. And he's like, blood sacrifice, and he's like, crap, he used it, then he killed Vanessa, and that was seen as a blood sacrifice. And so he's still been playing into the sun god's plans and stuff without even knowing it. But yeah, that's kind of where things kind of end, where he ends up, getting into the sun, and then taking out the beast dude or whatever, and they kind of just going home to Arwen and stuff. And so now it's like, okay, what's going to be this next part of their story and their journey? So I'll be very interested to see where it goes from here. But like I said, I definitely enjoyed these 3 volumes, which was about 15 chapters all together. And I would be interested to see like how the anime does it, because like I said, it's only 15 chapters. They are, meaty chapters. So I would expect the anime, whether it be 12, 13 episodes, whatever, to probably try to adapt, maybe, or maybe they might do 24, I don't know. Try to adapt this whole little batch of volumes and stuff. So, but anywho, that's it for that. So, thank you so much for watching and or listening. Remember, you can find me everywhere at Dad Needs to Talk, where I talk about everything, not just manga, but also fatherhood and family, anime, TV shows, movies, and of course, some video games. And so, let me know if you read The Kept Man of the Princess Knight, or if you have any interest in reading it, or maybe even checking out the anime when it comes out later this year. But until next time, always feel free to leave suggestions for stuff that you might think I'm interested in. Check out my other reviews and podcast episodes and stuff. And I will catch you on the next one. Y'all be easy. Peace.